Welcome back to Direct Station, where politics are in retrograde. I am Kate Carey. If you've been wondering why a Presbyterian minister standing in prayer outside an ICE facility was shot in the face with pepper balls while his hands were raised in supplication, or if you've been wondering why our president is simultaneously presiding over what he calls peace in the Middle East while declaring war on American cities, or if you've been wondering why the American government is gleefully using the shutdown to end programs, positions, departments that represent lowercase l liberal ideology, or if you've been wondering why you are feeling a sense of overwhelm or shutdown, to use a word, of wow, this is actually happening at this point, and I don't get what that means for me or for the people I love. For those of you just tuning in, around here what we do is track what's happening with the humans on the ground and wonder about what's brewing in the sky to try to make some sense or meaning of it all. Here's how it'll work. You'll tolerate slightly more astrology than you do in your day-to-day, even if you think it's dumb, and I'll provide a different way of looking at what we're living through. If astrology is not your jam, you can use the stories and ideas that I raise as archetypal prompts for your own reflection or your own coping capacity as you navigate this season. Today, we're going to talk about the expansion and escalation of cruelty, of control, of lies that leave us feeling overwhelmed and really quite certain that we have entered the authoritarian phase of America's story. We'll look at what's happened this week, what's happening in the sky. We'll look at what happened last week. We'll look at what was happening in the sky at the same time. And then we'll look at similar patterns that were creating similarly gripping moments in history. And what we might actually do when most of the muscles in our body are contracting towards something we cannot yet see. Then we'll make some meaning of it all. We'll look at a bit of literature, literary context to see what seers and sayers before us and around us are saying about this, have said about similar events in the past. And then we'll end with some action, some reflection, some practice, and some poetry. Come on, it'll be fun. Let's talk about this week, because the escalation is not just continuing, it is contracting at this point, like a fist that is closing tighter and tighter around us. Pastor David Black was standing outside the Broadview ICE facility in Chicago, hands raised in prayer, not protesting, not threatening, praying. ICE agents shot him in the face with pepper balls. Pepper balls are a sphere with a shell that is designed to crack open on impact. That's they have what's called an irritant payload. That irritant is a substance sort of like the stuff you find in mace, right? So you see a lot of the stories that we're starting to get now involve that substance and involve people being incarcerated, trapped, detained with that substance on them or in them in a way that is, horrible. 7 times while his hands were up, while he stood in the universal posture of supplication, the man was shot in the face. Oh, sorry, he was shot once in the face, multiple times on the rest of his body. The video is horrifying, not just for violence, but for how casual it is. Like swatting a fly, like he wasn't even human to the people who did it. There's another one going around where a young woman is yelling at an officer and he shoots around directly into her face as well. This is apparently a thing that we're doing now. The number of reports like this is growing by the minute. It's shocking. The word disrespect is so insufficient that it is hard to know how to talk about it, but the trend is a profound disrespect for the bodily autonomy of other people. This week, there's also a mounting combative discourse that holds facts quite loosely. A formal statement from the Department of Homeland Security described the events around an ICE facility in Portland as increasingly violent as more domestic terrorists gather. Terrorists. By the way, have you read the definition of terrorist recently? Here's one. An individual or group that uses violence or the threat of violence against people or property to further the advance of political objectives, often to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. The protesters are unarmed. ICE is armed for, I don't know, their favorite video game, or maybe Fallujah if it were 2004. The protesters are unarmed. They're nearly universally peaceful, thank God. Intimidate, really? Your unarmed, gathered, upset countrymen are here to intimidate you or coerce the civilian population or harm the civilians? What? What? The official Homeland Security account also said that these Democratic terrorists are rapists, murderers, and other violent criminals. Truly, that's a quote. Meanwhile, Kristi Noem took right-wing influencer Benny Johnson on a ride-along through Chicago. Johnson then posted an AI-generated video of himself as Batman, beating up people in sombreros, literally punching a woman in the face, calling it the Deep Dish Deportation Center. He posted this while wearing a tactical vest because, as he claimed, Democrat terrorists have attacked them with bricks, sticks, knives, and explosives. Like, we advanced from using a grain of truth in our lives to just a total recreation of reality, right? And the way he's so casual about it, so easy with it. Like, I'm just another Z influencer child talking about cool shit. Look at this, oppression and dehumanization. Isn't that almost as funny as the latest prank, Marvel joke? I don't know what to compare it to, right? They called a Chicago alderperson asking for warrants at a hospital a threat and handcuffed her and detained her for asking if officers raiding a fucking emergency room had a warrant for what they were doing. They tear gassed a family walking home from preschool because someone near them was in the way of one of their giant unmarked trucks. Jessica Dixon, the mother who was in that family, said something that struck me. Quote, "It seems reasonable to expect that in an American city, you could go a block away from your own house and not worry about getting tear gassed when you're just getting home from preschool." Fair point, Jessica. Reasonable expectations are long gone, though. We are so far past reasonable. We are in the grip of this thing now. One judge found it necessary to issue a restraining order this week prohibiting federal agents from using riot control weapons, firing tear gas canisters, excessive force like tackling or body slamming, and striking anyone with vehicles. The fact that a federal judge had to specifically prohibit federal agents from hitting people with cars tells you everything about where we are right now. Nobody hearing this has an ounce of faith that such an order would even be followed, right? And as I record this, all the violence escalates in American cities, and Trump is enjoying some pomp and circumstance in Israel and Egypt, claiming he has brought peace and an end to war in the Middle East. The cognitive dissonance would be laughable if it weren't so dangerous, so loaded with danger, with what happens next for the 2.3 million Gazans still very alive. That, by the way, is the size of the population in Houston, Texas, or Paris, France, or Queens, New York. So we've got the performance of peace abroad and the war at home, except there's no peace abroad, and the war at home is entirely his provocation. And while bodies are being brutalized in the streets, there's another kind of violence happening, quieter, but just as vicious. They're using the government shutdown as cover to or even excuse to dismantle everything that helps people who need help. Since the shutdown began, they've been firing people with this kind of gleeful precision. 1,400 at Treasury, 1,200 at HHS, 500 at HUD. But the Department of Education, a place and a mission that is near and dear to my heart and that of most of my friends, they didn't just cut it, they eviscerated it. They laid off the remaining staff in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. It's gone. The Office of Innovation and Early Learning, gone. The Charter Schools Program, gone. The Office of Safe and Supportive Schools, listen to that name, Safe and Supportive Schools. No, we don't need that, gone. The Office of Migrant Education, of course, gone. Student support services, the programs that help first-generation college students, international students, that support HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, gone. And most grotesquely, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, the office that ensures disabled children get an education, got it down to maybe a handful of people. They're not even pretending this is about fiscal responsibility. This is about removing every structure that says we take care of each other. Every office that says every child deserves to learn. It's the systematic dismantling of the very idea that government exists to help people. But here's what I keep thinking about. They're creating this chaos they claim to be stopping. Every violent act creates more protesters. Every protester gives them an excuse for more violence. It's like a death grip where both sides are kind of contracting, pulling tighter, and nobody can let go, even though everyone can feel that something is about to snap. What could possibly explain this particularly potent rising action, this escalating speech, this upsurge in the stakes of the game? Last week, I talked to you about this deeply impactful dance. of Mars, the planet of war, and Mercury, the planet of communications, in the skyland of Scorpio, which is the skyland of mystery and intensity, transformation. We spent more time talking about Mercury last week, the planet of words and ideas, right? But who is affecting those words and those ideas in that critical skyland? Well, it's Mr. Mars. The most I've ever really told you about Mars is that he's the god of war, in charge of aggression and action. And he is, but there's so much more to him. So we're going to look at him today. Mars is the planet of assertiveness, impulsiveness, force, courage, and anger. Anger. Feeling much of that lately. Okay. New experiment today. For learning purposes, I want to share with you. Maybe this is TMI. You'll let me know. Much of my love life has involved Scorpios who haven't yet sorted out their shadow side. So think of that while I share the traits of this skyland where Mars and Mercury are currently dancing and affecting us so deeply. In that skyland and in my cursed love life, we have got intensity, magnetism, resourcefulness, secrets, mysteries, jealousy. Funny when you think of it like that, right? But now take those qualities and apply them to the skyland Mars and Mercury dance in. Here you get death and rebirth, transformations, deeply emotional connections, and a strong feeling of loyalty. Loyal to whom or to what, you might ask? The sigil for Scorpio is the sign of the scorpion, a creature that when it grabs something with its pincers, literally cannot let go. People used to say that about pit bulls, remember, that their jaws can lock? With scorpions, that's really the case. At that point, once the Scorpio has chosen to strike before the kill, there's this biological imperative to hold its prey in place, right? See, here's the great mystery with all this scorpionic energy. We don't yet know who is building towards that strike. This dominating, violent, inhumane force, or the American people. Are we the scorpion, gripping our resistance and rage so tight we're about to sting and take back power? Or are we the prey, caught in someone else's pincers while they prepare to inject their venom and take over our country for good? Maybe, and this is what keeps me up at night, maybe we're both. Right now, Mars in Scorpio is building towards an exact conjunction with Mercury on October 20th. They're going to meet up on the 20th. So if you're listening to this on or before the 20th, yeah, that's a week from today as I record this. When the planet of war and action meets the planet of words and communication in the sign of secrets and vengeance, the death grip gets a voice, right? The pincers start to speak. The violence becomes articulate. We are already hearing it. Domestic terrorists, war-torn Chicago, increasingly violent, attacking with bricks, right? Each word feels closer to that strike. But wait, there's more. And I will just say this briefly, but you should know about it. This past Friday, Saturn opposed Venus. Saturn, Mr. Consequences, Mr. Reality Check, Mr. Harsh Boundaries, was staring down Venus, the goddess of love, of core values, of pleasure, of relationships. When these two oppose each other, it's like watching your parents have a bitter argument at the dinner table, right? If you had parents who ate dinner together and argued and stayed together, I don't know. But structure and love, right? Staring each other down. They're not even pretending to get along in that opposition, in that moment. So no wonder a pastor got shot while praying. Prayer is Venus territory. Pepper balls are Saturn's authority and discipline as much as they are Mars' aggression. You see how these things all kind of work together to shape our reality. The fact that they're not even trying to hide the cruelty this time, the way they're all so arrogant and blatant and casual. About everything. That's Saturn saying, I don't need Venus's approval anymore. I don't need to be loved. I just need to be obeyed. And Venus is like, fine, do you. Let's see where it gets you. And y'all, all of this scorpionic gripping and Saturn, Venus arguing is happening against the backdrop of our old friends, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction approaching in February of 26, right? So they're the ones who change the structures, move the borders, and end, often quite suddenly, mass delusions when they meet up. So they're the reality check. Saturn, Mr. Authority, Mr. Firmness, Mr. Structure, Mr. Accountability, meeting the collective dream that Neptune brings and asking, so what's actually real here? Instead of this two reality situation, which one of them is real? So, guys, the overwhelm you're feeling is not just emotional. Your body is responding to the cosmic contraction. Every planet is waiting and building and holding us for something. Mars scuttling ever closer with its threats and escalations from Scorpio, Saturn considering and then turning away from Venus, and us down here, our muscles literally contracting in response. That I don't know how much more of this I can take feeling. That is you resonating with the planetary predator prey vibe that's happening up there. Where's that honey badger energy when we need it? Let's look at patterns in history that give us hints about what we're living through now with this Mars in Scorpio dance at the same time that Saturn and Neptune are planning a meetup. So when has Mars been in Scorpio during those Saturn-Neptune conjunction periods before? Because history has some stories to tell about death grips and who ends up being the scorpion or the victim. Let's see. We'll start with November 1989. You knew I wasn't going to talk about Saturn and Neptune heading towards each other without including the fall of the Berlin Wall. But listen, it wasn't just those two meeting. Mars, god of war, was also in Scorpio when that occurred. So by 1989, the Berlin Wall has been standing for 28 years. East Germany has been death gripping its citizens, literally. Shoot to kill orders at the wall. If you approach the wall, you will be shot. Families separated. The Stasi watching everyone. The grip seems permanent, right? They have all the guns. The citizens just have all this pent up anger and like this risky resistance that they have to work with. Sound familiar? But then November 9th happens. A bureaucrat misspeaks at a press conference about travel regulations. People rush the wall. Guards don't know what to do. Moscow is not answering the phone. And suddenly, the grip just releases. People are taking hammers to concrete. Guards are crying, embracing the people they were supposed to shoot. The scorpion just let go. What seemed eternal dissolved in one night. Now let's go to 1882. Again, Mars is in Scorpio, while Saturn and Neptune are together. This is the Chinese Exclusion Act era. We haven't talked about this one as much. White supremacist mobs are striking American identity, holding it in that scorpionic grip. And I mean that literally. They burned Phoenix's Chinatown to the ground. Regular shopkeepers started throwing out customers that they've been serving for years. Neighbors turning violent on neighbors. The scorpion energy did not release. The results was that it hardened into law. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 literally codified the hatred into federal law, making it illegal for Chinese laborers to immigrate to the United States, leaving behind ancestral, generational trauma that no doubt rears its head with these raids. But my absolute favorite and weird, kind of hilarious parallel is in 1809. And this one's special because it shows us what happens when somebody embodies the scorpionic energy so completely they literally cannot let go of anything. Not war, not love, not even their own destruction. Speaking of honey badger. In October and November of that year, Mars is in Scorpio, Saturn and Neptune are doing their thing, and Napoleon, the ultimate scorpion, never letting go of anything, is stuck in two pincers at once. First, something called the Peninsular War is happening in Spain. This is a turning point fight involving the UK, Portugal, Spain, that closes a significant chapter in the Napoleonic Wars, leading to his temporary exile, and even providing what proved to be sort of a fatal wound to this particular dictator. They called it the Spanish ulcer because it just bled and bled. Napoleon couldn't win it, couldn't abandon it, couldn't let it go. Spanish priests were leading guerrilla bands. Speaking of brave holy men, regular people were killing French soldiers in their sleep. The word guerrilla, little war, was literally invented for this intimate scorpionic violence that ultimately defeated this mighty army. And guys, listen, at the exact same time, I'm talking the same weeks, the man's love life was coming to a climactic close, embodying all of these forces. So the story is he loved Josephine. Josephine loved him. Their love is real. No, there's no question in any of the documentation, any of the letters, any of the behaviors, any of the actions, right? He loved her, she loved him. And he was desperate for an heir, and she could not produce an heir. And so he divorced her. claiming until his death that he loved her and she loved him too. He took care of her, I think, financially for the rest of her life, but he ended the marriage because he needed an heir, right? So he was chewing off his own hand despite his face, right? His dream then, Neptune. So we got all these planets happening. Remember, Neptune and Saturn are about to meet. Mars is in Scorpio. So you got his dream, Neptune, with Josephine meeting the reality, Saturn, of his ambitions for a dynasty. His intense, deep loyalty, that's Scorpio, is tested through his decisive action in the matter. That's Mars. So while he's literally at the climax of the war, he is at the climax of this relationship. And in neither one can he choose between his ambition and his reality. Come on, you cannot make this shit up. The personal grip of the scorpionic pincer dissolves, but he doubles down on the military grip. And we know how that ends. That inability to let go of the Peninsular War does bleed him dry, does contribute directly to his downfall. Sometimes what you refuse to release is exactly what destroys you. Let's remember that. Remember, Scorpio is also a place of life and death and transformation. And we see that in all of these stories, right? So this pattern is talking to us. When Mars grips with those pincers in Scorpio during Saturn-Neptune times, which is what we're living through, something has to give. Something intense rises and something has to give. Either you release, like Berlin, and transform, or you grip like the Chinese exclusion era and poison everything for generations. Or, I mean, I guess if you want, you're Napoleon releasing the wrong thing while gripping what would kill you. These are the historical patterns. So how can we make meaning of them? The violence will find its perfect words, or the words will become perfectly violent. When Mercury and Mars meet in Scorpio, secrets get weaponized. What's been happening in shadow becomes undeniable. That's what we're watching unfold right now. It does occur to me to wonder if the events planned for the No King's March have anything to do with this, right? If that is one of the ways that this Mercury and Mars meetup is going to manifest. Let's turn to literature to see who has or who is saying what that can help us better understand, better reflect upon what we're living through. First, I want to turn to Timothy Snyder, who explains what this war of words is really doing to us. So as we watch this war of words mount this week, let's reflect, let's remember Snyder's caution. There is no doctrine called extremism. When tyrants speak of extremists, they just mean people who are not in the mainstream, as the tyrants themselves are defining that mainstream at that particular moment. Dissidents of the 20th century, whether they were resisting fascism or communism, were called extremists. Modern authoritarian regimes such as Russia use laws on extremism to punish those who criticize their policies. In this way, the notion of extremism comes to mean virtually everything except what it is. In fact, extreme tyranny, end quote. So when tyrants call you an extremist, they're just admitting that you are not in their mainstream anymore, right? The mainstream that they're redefining minute by minute to justify their own violence, their own greed, their own actions. And it's an onslaught, guys, by design. Nadim Aslam, a Pakistani British novelist writing about cycles of violence, captured something I think we're all feeling right now. In his novel, The Golden Legend, he explores the religious infighting in Pakistan. In one scene, his main character notices how she feels. He writes, quote, "She thought of the boy thrown into the cauldron of war, the girl beset by various bigotries, her life in danger, and saw how unjust it all was. Her fury limitless for a few moments, and she felt a sense of shame, something akin to accusation from them towards her and her generation for not having constructed a better world to welcome and contain their beauty, to house their spirit." End quote. That shame for not having built a better world, it sits heavy, right? But here's the thing, that fury that you feel, that's not paralysis. That is potential energy coiled up inside of us and waiting. I've even got a Shakespeare quote about this. Shakespeare understood these moments of transformation. In The Tempest, Ariel sings about what happens when we go through these deep changes. Quote, "Full fathom 5 thy father lies, of his bones are coral made, those are pearls that were his eyes. Nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange." End quote. We are in that sea change now. What looks like death, like drowning and overwhelm, might actually be transformation. The scorpionic energy doesn't just destroy, it metamorphosizes. James Baldwin, who knew about living under the constant threat of state violence, who watched Black bodies brutalized by those claiming to protect and serve, he reminds us, quote, "The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out." So that's our choice, isn't it? We can let the grip paralyze us, let the fear isolate us, let their words and their word weapons make us believe that we're the terrorists for standing in prayer, for walking our children home, for asking for warrants during a raid in an emergency room? Or can we recognize this grip for what it is, not the end, but the momentum, but the moment before transformation? The scorpion has to choose now. Keep gripping or strike. And while it's deciding, while Mercury and Mars dance closer and closer together, while the violence seeks its perfect words, we hold each other, not with pincers, but with purpose, not to possess or control, but to survive this sea change together. Because empires that grip their own people this tight, they are usually the ones that shatter in the end. The pastor with his hands up knew this. The mother walking home from preschool will remember this. And we, exhausted and furious, but still here, we're learning it too. So listen, your overwhelm is real. Your exhaustion is valid. Your sense that every muscle in your body is contracting towards something you cannot name, that is not anxiety. That is accuracy. You're feeling the cosmic contraction in your bones. You are a mammal. Remember that as this unfolds. But remember also, the Berlin Wall fell in a single night. What seems permanent can dissolve in hours. Sometimes the scorpion just goes away, metaphorically, right? It just gets overtaken by events. Something larger and more powerful and more real can take hold. Scorpio is not only about what dies, it is also about what is reborn. The question isn't whether we are the scorpion or the prey. We were always both. We always were. The question is what we do with that knowledge. So what do we do when we're all scorpions, all prey, all contracting towards a strike that we cannot yet predict? First, I want to offer you an action. This week, seek wisdom outside of this war of words. Have you read a novel lately? Have you watched a drama? Have you read the seminal texts in your belief system? I say this week, reach for the wisdom that comes from centuries of humans having lived through this and much, much, much worse. Let us remember our humanity by turning to the wisdom that reminds us of who we are and what we are capable of, even in this awful pinch that makes us want to go, I don't know, catatonic. Is that what animals do during these strikes? Second, I offer you a practice. When you feel that overwhelming contraction, that full body tension, remind yourself that scorpions don't sting because they're strong. They sting because they're terrified. When you see the violence escalating, Pastor Black's face, the family's gasped, remember that is fear contracting. Empires don't get more violent when they're winning, when everyone is calm and doing what they're told, right? They get violent when they're losing, when they're feeling the strike coming for them, the strike of the people pushing back. So let them, and let your practice be this. Take some fucking time to honor the overwhelm you are feeling. Take some time to honor what you're living through and to allow it to crack you a little bit. Allow yourself to discharge some of it a little bit, to notice, to name, to share with other people who are also living through this too. Like this week, I was forced to confess to myself that it is officially getting to me. It is officially like fucking with my mental health, right? To live through this. I know that's obvious from almost all of us, but like I hadn't really named it for myself. I hadn't really noticed. Maybe this week was just worse. I listened to Tim Miller interview that kid who is a veteran. He's a citizen. He was held and tortured for 3 days in California. Even as I did it, I thought, you should turn this off. But I didn't. And it's got me. It's this getting to me, right? And having spent a bit of the weekend working through those feelings, I can report that it is better to name it, to feel it, to know it, to discharge some of it, than it is to just kind of ignore it and just wait for it to stop, because it's not going to stop anytime soon. We all know that. And finally, as always, I offer a reflection. Where is this shit blasting through your life? I'm so sorry I'm swearing so much today. I usually try to limit it to one or none, but anyway, truly, where in your life are you Scorpion or prey? Where are you gripping so tight that you're hurting yourself? The personal is political. And this cosmic weather is hitting your individual chart too. That relationship that you can't release, that grief that you won't feel, or that power struggle at work, that's your personal peninsular war that is happening as Mars travels through Scorpio, dancing with Mercury, watching Saturn and Neptune prepare to meet, right? Like that is all happening in your actual personal life too. Don't forget that. Finally, I want to leave you with a poem. This one is from Walt Whitman. It is called Long, Too Long America. He's writing at the beginning of the Civil War. And it's a reflection, and I read it as a love poem to America about like what is coming and what is possible. It's very short. He says, long, too long, America, traveling roads all even and peaceful. You learned from joys and prosperity only. But now, now, you learn from crisis of anguish, advancing, grappling with direst fate, and recoiling not. And now to conceive and show to the world what your children en masse really are. For who except myself has yet conceived what your children en masse really are? So, y'all, we, America's children, are capable of showing the world what we really are, what we truly are. As we face this fight, as we face this war of words, as we face this literal violence, as we face this banality of evil, as we face this moment and face what it's doing to our lives, to our bodies, to our country, we are America's children. I have a dear friend who's leaving. And I was just talking to him this morning and I said, oh, I used to want to leave. And now I don't. Now I don't. Because this is my country, God damn it. Like, I do believe in it. I have always fought for it. I have always spent every waking professional breath trying to make this a better country. And I'm not stopping now. Doing it a different way than I used to, but we have to try something. We have to save this, right? We are America's children. We are capable of turning this around. If you would like to understand how these patterns are hitting your personal chart, where your own scorpionic grips need releasing, I offer readings that can help you navigate your unique relationship with this energy. My email is in the episode description. Please do write a review and follow and find me in all the places. I'm on Substack and Instagram and YouTube now. YouTube seems to be taking on a life of its own where the shorts are very popular with the mean men. so come over there and help me with that. Until next time, remember that the story is unfolding and you are experiencing a natural and predictable stage of the process. As we assimilate this level of intensity, we will begin to know what to do, how to strike, how to save our country. Track that knowing as it's rising in you and move with it. Allow yourself to speak with it. As the 20th comes into your personal life and into our country's life, watch what happens when aggression meets voice. Watch what happens in you. Until next time, be well, be conscious, and be kind. I will see you soon.